Hello everyone, and welcome back to Storytime. If you're new here, I am Monk, and I'd like to read you a story. Before we begin, let's make sure we have all of our passies, our stuffies, and special blankets for Storytime. If you need more time to gather everything, please pause the video. Today, we're picking back up with Frog and Toad in Frog and Toad, A Lost Button. Let's begin. Toad and Frog went for a long walk. They walked across a large meadow. They walked in the woods. They walked along the river. At last, they went back home to Toad's house. "Oh, drat," said Toad. "Not only do my feet hurt, but I have lost one of my buttons on my jacket." Oh, goodness. "Don't worry," said Frog. "We will go back to all the places where we walked. We will soon find your button." They walked back to the large meadow. They began to look for the button in the tall grass. What a good friend. I love that. "Here is your button," cried Frog. "That is not my button," said Toad. "That button is black. My button was white." Toad put the black button in his pocket. And here they are, looking in the tall grass. And there's Frog that found the wrong button. I love these stories. A sparrow flew down. "Excuse me," said the sparrow. "Did you lose a button? I found one." "That is not my button," said Toad. "That button has 2 holes. My button had 4 holes." Toad put the button with 2 holes in his pocket. They went back to the woods and looked on the dark paths. "Here is your button," said Frog. "That is not my button," cried Toad. "That button is small. My button was big." Toad put the small button in his pocket. There's the sparrow that tried to help. And there's Frog, showing Toad another wrong button. A raccoon came from behind a tree. "I heard that you were looking for a button," he said. "Here is one that I found." "That is not my button," wailed Toad. "That button is square. My button was round." Toad put the square button in his pocket. He has a pretty nice collection of buttons now. It's pretty cool. Frog and Toad went back to the river. They looked for the button in the mud. "Here is your button," said Frog. "That is not my button," shouted Toad. "That button is thin. My button was thick." Here's the raccoon. Just trying to help. And there's Frog and Toad looking in the mud. Toad put the thin button in his pocket. He was very angry. He jumped up and down and screamed, "The whole world is covered with buttons, and not one of them is mine." Toad ran home and slammed the door. There, on the floor, he saw his white 4-holed big round thick button. "Oh," he said, "it was here all the time. What a lot of trouble I have made for Frog." I love that he recognized that. He's such a good friend. And there he is, upset. And there he is. Found his button himself. They're very good friends. I like that. Do you have a best friend? Let me know in the comments. We all need good friends, right? Especially like Toad and Frog. Toad took all the buttons out of his pocket. He took his sewing box down from the shelf. Toad sewed the buttons all over his jacket. The next day, Toad gave his jacket to Frog. Frog thought that it was beautiful. He put it on and jumped for joy. None of the buttons fell off. Toad had sewed them on very well. There he is with all the buttons. And there he is, going to work. Do any of you like to sew? Look at that, so happy. How wonderful. Do any of you like to sew? Do you like to make stuff? Let me know in the comments. The end. Thank you so very much for letting me read to you. I hope you have a wonderful rest.